My name is Maria George and I'm the founder of Inoka International, but I'm also a heart patient myself. My actual journey was a very long time ago because I was diagnosed over 20 years ago, but even the journey to diagnosis was really difficult. I didn't think I'd got a heart problem, and of course that's a shock. I thought I had something wrong with my back. I didn't have any of the classic Hollywood-style chest pain, clutching your chest. There was none of that. And I went to the hospital eventually after putting up with it for several days and then said, I really don't feel very well and I'm sure there's something wrong. So it wasn't classic, which I think is important to point out for anybody, patients listening. They did everything right. They took all the right tests, they took the bloods, they did the ECGs and said, yes, we think you're having a heart attack. So I was more shocked, if I'm honest, than anything at the time. And then after that, the day after, I was put on coronary care unit and taken for an angiogram. And that's where the story changed. Because, of course, in Inoka, it's a little bit different. So the morning after they did the angiogram and said, you have no plaque whatsoever in your arteries are completely clear. They still are today. I've just had a retest. So they sent me home and said, there's nothing wrong with your heart. So that's where the problem lies for me, because I just had to keep going back with really bad chest pain. And the difficulty and the good part were both sort of balanced because I had an incredibly good care team who stuck up for me and supported me and encouraged me, which was wonderful. But from a medical perspective at that time, which was 20 years ago, they didn't really understand what it was. So there were repeated visits to hospital being told, go home, there's nothing wrong with you. So it was quite a long time before I was put on medication. Medication was amazing. It made such a huge difference. I'm a great believer in medication. But also lifestyle changes too, and about being careful, watching out for triggers. So over the years it became more easy to manage, not quite as difficult to manage. And I think at the beginning you think this is going to be awful. My life will never be the same again. One of the patients the other day said, she's due for retirement, and she said, retirement wasn't meant to look like this, and I understand that completely. So I think one of the other important messages is to say it may look awful in the beginning, but actually it can get a lot better. Mental health is very much better now, sort of catered to than it was then. I think at the time I was already used to being disabled because I'd been disabled years before that. But the mental health side of it for me was you lose a sense of self, because who you were before you were diagnosed with a heart condition is very much different to who you ended up being after the heart condition, certainly in the beginning. And I had a very successful career, I was very active, I was a size 10, and of course you suddenly change to being this very different person. So your plans in your mind about who you are, what you're going to do with your life, how your family is going to be, what your life's going to look like is different. So there's a huge risk of becoming very depressed. I am a very popular person, so I personally didn't. But that doesn't mean to say there wasn't a risk of that happening. There certainly was. I just had incredibly good family support, a really good network. And I think more now, there is a better support network, a general one outside of family, and I'm really happy about that. But I think also peer group, talking, discussions, forums, so vital. And they make a huge difference because you're talking to people who've been there and who've had that experience and who understand how you might feel, because you can lose who you are, definitely. When I got to the point where my consultant, Professor Kasky, had diagnosed me and then said, this is going to be a journey. I can't cure you, it can't be fixed, we can manage it and tweak the medications to the best. And that said it perfectly for me. And I said, are there lots of people who have these conditions? And he said, oh gosh, yes. And I said, if I can bring a meeting together, will you speak at it? And he said, yes. And that was the beginning. And I thought, if I can help one person not have to go through years and years of this, because when you actually hear the stories of other patients, it can be 20 years where they're still undiagnosed, and that's a lifetime gone, One of the other patients said she used to run her little ones around the school, and she said now, after her heart condition, her children only know her as the lady under the blanket on a sofa, and that's so sad. So to me it was important to try and raise awareness, to try and help understanding not just of Inoka, but of heart conditions generally, because I think people don't quite understand that they can be better than you think initially, that they can be improved, and that in most cases there can be some sort of management, if not cure. For me, I think it's possibly less noticeable if you're not working in advocacy, but for me, back then it was not particularly personalised care. It certainly wasn't integrated care generally. For me it was, and I had great care, and I'm forever grateful for that. But even down to things like appointments, if you have an appointment as a patient, you might have 10 in the space of a month in different departments, in different hospitals with different people. But if you have integrated care, you can actually coordinate those appointments, get 3 or 4 done at the same time. That happens to me even now, and 20 years on, they still do that, which is great. So I think the way the medical services work has changed, and I think there is a better option for integrated personal care, and I think they have to, I would say, focus on the patient, but it's about having a global vision of care and actually understanding what matters to the patient. I said yesterday at a meeting, you have to find out who that patient is in front of you, because what matters to one patient won't matter at all to another patient. So if you can find out what matters to this person, you can treat that person the best possible and improve their life. That's a difficult one, because there's so many good messages and positive messages and important messages. I mean, I've stuck with one that I've had for a long time, and I think it's just as important today as it was then, and that is, please listen, please learn, and then please lead on what you learn with everybody, whether that's your medical colleagues, your family, your doctors treating you, because we have to learn from one another. You know, it's not just about, in the old days, of doctors telling you what to do. Doctors want to help. So if you can get involved and be partnerships in that journey, you will be prescribing medicines that that person wants to take and knows about, and you will be asking them to get involved in treatments that they want to engage in. So if you can do a shared decision making, that would be my key message. Please try to share decision making. World Heart Federation, big organisations like this, these are key. If you didn't have the World Heart Federation, let's say, you would not know, I certainly wouldn't know, that nearly 21 million people die each year from cardiovascular disease, and that's a third of the population. That's huge. You know, we can all have little campaigns and we can all learn little bits of knowledge, but if you have access to really responsible, reliable data like that, you know exactly what you're talking about, because I don't think people truly realise the absolute impact of cardiovascular disease, and only through campaigns like yourselves do they find that out.